I decided to create my first puzzle game where you play as a little devil with interesting abilities from invisibility to possessing different game objects. By combining these powers, you'll need to open doors, sneak past knights and beat the game. In this video, I'll show you the process of making this game from scratch to a finished puzzle. A couple of weeks ago, I was sitting and thinking about the new game concept to practice my skills in game dev. The only thing I knew for sure was that the game will be pixelated and in top-down view. While browsing the internet, I came across a free pixel art asset pack with animations of different characters. My first thought was to just grab a knight from there and make a game where you walk around, killing everyone who attacks you, using different weapons and fighting various enemies. But then I thought, there are already so many games like that, and with my little experience in game dev, it would have probably turned out super boring. So I started brainstorming something more unique. After seeing the demon animations in the pack, it hit me. Why not make a game where you don't play as a regular knight or hero, but as a demon? A demon who can possess others, tempt them and control them. That sounded fun, and with a mix of tricks and abilities, the goal would be to get through the game. I decided to give the demon 4 main abilities: invisibility, possessing knights, putting knights to sleep, and extinguishing torches to distract the knights. I imagined the game like this. There are 2 knights standing by a closed door that you need to open, and there's a lever nearby. The goal is to figure out how to pull the lever and get through the door without getting caught by the other knights, using these 4 abilities. The first step was to create the basic framework, where you can control the player, set up the main room where everything happens, and place the 2 knights. A few hours of coding later, we already have a rough version of the game coming together. However, right now our knights don't react to the player. I fixed that. Now the knights can chase the demon if they see him, calculating the shortest path, but they still can't do anything to the player for now. Since our knights can see the player and chase him, we can add our first ability, invisibility. We will decrease the player's transparency, add a smoke effect, place a timer at the bottom, and include a text label invisibility in the corner to show when the ability can be used again. And look at this wonder, we have our first ability. Now these knights can't see us even if we are right next to them. Alright, let's move on to creating the second ability, putting enemies to sleep. I've set up a small zone around the player that detects the nearest object entering it, so we can make that object fall asleep. Now let's add a sleep animation for the knight, find another smoke animation online, add a timer and a sleep spell label, just like we did last time. And finally, now we can do like this. Pretty cool, right? And by the way, I added some torches. I just found these torch animations and added some light to it. While testing my game, which originally had just 2 rooms, I felt like something was missing. So I decided to add a few extra rooms before the main puzzle room. These extra rooms would serve as a tutorial, where a player could test and learn how to use the abilities. Plus, it would make the map more engaging and enjoyable for the player. Here's how the map looks now. Let me just sprinkle a bit of decor here and there, and here's our final result. As you have probably noticed, the player can walk right through the doors. Let's fix that by adding colliders to each door, making them solid. To open the doors and remove the colliders, I decided to add keys and locks. I wrote some code that lets the player pick up the key and direct it with the mouse. Each key and lock has a unique code based on color. And when the player picks up the key, goes to the door with the matching code and clicks the mouse button, the door opens. I placed each of these keys in different rooms, and in each room I added a knight, who guards the key and chases the player. The next step was to come up with some kind of ability to distract the knights. At first I had a few ideas in mind, like transforming into an animal, maybe a dog, or turning into other people like a princess, or even interacting with objects in the environment to create a distraction. Although the ideas of transforming into a dog or a person sounded really cool, there were a lot of questions. For example, if I turn into a dog, I wanted only one knight to get distracted and not both at once. But how do I make that work? Just peeking around a corner or something? And if I went with the princess idea, what would the knight do after he runs after her and catches her? And why would he even chase the princess in the first place? So in the end, I decided to make a simpler ability, turning off a torch. It's easy, convenient, and does exactly what I need. I added an invisible trigger zone around the torch. The knight who enters this zone will react when the torch is put out. This way, only the knights within the zone get distracted, making the mechanic feel more controlled and logical. As you may have noticed, the knights have gotten smarter. They can now find their way back to their guard post after checking out the torch. To make them even smarter, I wrote some code that lets them find their way back if they lose sight of the player who turns invisible during a chase. And to take it a step further, I added code so they can wake up their sleeping friend. As I'm explaining all this and showing the final result, it might seem like everything went smoothly, but from the moment I started working on this game, errors and little bugs have been following me everywhere. Adding new behavior patterns for the knights was no exception. Next, I decided to create the final ability, possessing a sleeping knight. I spent a lot of time thinking about how to make this mechanic work, basically how to switch control from the demon to the knight. In the end, I chose to create a completely new knight object, one that the demon possesses, with its own animations and control scripts. So, when you possess a sleeping knight within range, the red knight on the scene deactivates and an orange knight appears at the same coordinates, ready to be controlled. To make this transition less obvious, I added a cloud-like animation, or whatever you wanna call it, to smooth things out. Then I placed a timer below the orange knight to limit the time you can control the possessed knight. As usual, I also added a possession label in the corner, which fills up after use to show when the ability is ready again. And that's how it all turned out. So, there's one thing I wanna add. I'd love for the knight who sees his body being possessed by the demon to chase him down, and if he catches his possessed friend, the game ends. The whole point of adding the ability to snuff out torches and distract the knights was to build up to this moment, kind of like a puzzle that the player needs to figure out. But hey, let's skip over the boring part where I'm just writing code and fixing a ton of bugs and check out the results. So far we've got a pretty interesting puzzle taking shape. Now, if one knight sees another knight sleeping, he'll wake him up. And if a knight gets possessed, the other knight who saw it will chase the possessed knight. To avoid that, you'll first need to distract one of the knights, put another one to sleep, and only then possess. The next and final step of the puzzle is to add a lever to open the door. However, I decided to replace the lever with a button. This button is linked to the door and works like this. The door opens when you stand on the button and closes when you step off. Such a simple mechanic makes the puzzle more interesting than just using a lever. But here's the twist. The player can simply walk up and press the button, as it's not that straightforward. At this point, the puzzle is for you to solve. Feel free to pause the video and think about how you would solve it. The solution goes like this. After distracting the knight and possessing him, you have to wait. When the time remaining to control the possessed knight is less than the sleep duration of the second knight, you put the second knight to sleep and step on the button. Wait until the possession time runs out and then walk through the door. And there you go, puzzle solved. Now all that's left is to create the menu, the game over and victory screens. I also decided to add some signs. These signs will serve as instructions for new players to help them figure out what to do and which buttons to press to activate certain abilities. As a final step, I added sound effects to the game.
Hey! Hey! What? What? What?
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like. I might add new levels with fresh puzzles like tricking the knight by turning into a princess and so on. Who knows, maybe one day I'll create a full game with levels like this and a storyline. Feel free to share your interesting ideas about the game or new levels in the comments. See you soon in the next video.